All right, we're going to get started. Our speaker tonight, Raymundo Aguadiero. Did I say it correctly?
Just Raymundo.
Oh, just Raymundo? Okay, just Raymundo is our speaker. Give it up for Raymundo.
Hello, everybody. Talking to this? Okay. Thank you for letting me be here. My name is Raymundo. I have a website called aguadiero.net, and it's a website to help people get into private express trust and understand how to stand up for yourself a little bit more in courts and file things pro se and push back a little bit. But to get to kind of a level of competency with courts, you really need to kind of know what the system is and why things kind of operate the way they do. And so tonight I'm going to talk about civil law, and hopefully you guys can walk away with a different or a better understanding of what civil law really is and what form of government we actually have. Anybody want to take a crack at defining civil law? Have you guys heard of it before? Okay.
Common law.
When I'm at the banks and I'm making a scene and the police arrive, they always say, "Sir, this is civil." Because I always call the police before the bankers do, and then anytime you think the police might come into the situation, call them, because then when the police arrive, you are actually their customer. So when I'm in the bank, the police come up and they're like, "Who called it?" And I say, "I did," and then I'm the customer.
Want me to look at it?
And they always say it's civil law, sir. There's nothing.
But you're onto a good point, though, is that the term civil does derive from civilian, and the same concept of acting and being civil is being a civilian. And there's a group of people. There's an entity that uses the word civilian quite a bit, and they always have. Civilians are usually the non-combatants. If ever there is a hostile situation and there are military forces involved, they operate per their rules, per their system, and then they have a whole system of government for everybody else. Because you can't really have a military power to expect to adhere to a local nation's government and restrictions that they may create. You know, the powerful military is going to do whatever they want, and they need to deal with the civilians in a certain way. And so the word civilian is the justification or start behind civil war or civil law. But as I just slipped and said civil war, that is also the source for American civil law. During the Civil War, as we know, it was the North versus the South. The Southern slave-holding states didn't want to be a part of the Union anymore and left. They rebelled. They left the Confederation. Now, there's a lot of politics and stories that could probably go into why all that went down, but what did definitely happen was that the federal government, which was restricted to Washington, D.C., left Washington, D.C., and occupied the free sovereign states to conduct the war, to corral the southern states back into obedience. The federal government attacked them. And, how the war was won and whatnot, the details aren't terribly relevant except for how it ended, because there is no documentation, no peace treaty or any type of indication that the war actually ended. There was a surrender, but there was no peace treaty. There was no agreement. And because of that, the federal government, while they were still occupying the free states, completely changed the function and form of state governments during the Reconstruction. The Reconstruction is something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. In history class, you might have heard some stuff about it. But as I've kind of looked back and studied it, realizing there was this massive change, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but they really pulled one over on us, and they could only really get away with it after a war. after a war in which brothers were fighting brothers and states were fighting states. And I imagine at that time, if you asked any American what they wanted, they would probably not to have a civil war ever again. They did not want war. And so, during the confusion and the healing of the Civil War, the state governments, which were Republican form, trust organizations, were changed. Before 1865, all state governments were operated and voted on and participated in by people, by men and women in that capacity. The law actually referenced people. After 1865, by the introduction of the United States citizen, a new thing was created. The 14th Amendment in the Civil Rights Act did not all of a sudden brand you as citizens of a new nation or change who you were. They didn't even give you a new title. They just created a new thing called the citizen of the United States. Now, the citizen of the United States is actually mentioned in the Constitution, so that was prior to 1865. But the fundamental mechanism that you really got to understand is that when paper creates a person, creates a thing, it has to be artificial. It cannot be real. Even law cannot say what you are. Now, they can create laws for things like persons and citizens of the United States, and they can just create as many laws as they want. And we, in our ignorance and possibly our brainwashing, can't see the difference, and we simply go along with the rules that are being made. We are in belief that they are rules for us, that it is a government of ours, of people. But if you research and you read state constitution and all the statutes, they do not create any rules or laws for people. It's only persons. They mention people very rarely, and there is a difference. Even historically, persons have always been characters. They've always been a role that you play and how you show up. A father, an employee, a taxpayer, a voter, a driver, a pedestrian, those are all persons. Those are all the characters that any one of us can play. So like when someone says to act civil, they want you to act as your character. If you're at work as an employee, they want you to act as the employee and do the employee things. So being a citizen or even a good citizen of the state of Colorado or the United States, from my viewpoint, means absolutely nothing more than obedience. It's simply following rules that they made. So, many important things to walk away with. But one thing to know is that civil law and all state government statutes are without question not for people. They cannot be for people. Nobody can create a law for somebody else unless it is actually consented, unless there is actual agreement, not just a presumption of agreement or a presumption of agreement because of participation. So the government we're supposed to have is a republic. And a republic is a bona fide contract with people, and that's why it's so rare, that it is actual trust. And the participants, the government agents of a republic government are the trustees. They are in contract with the people they govern directly. And the beneficiaries of that trust are the free people in that territory that have the full right to be absolutely left alone and do whatever they want while the government does their things without bothering the beneficiaries. And the original writers of the Constitution were the original grantors. And so the granting of their rights, their certain inalienable rights to the trust, to the trustees, for the betterment of their children. for the betterment of all future people of that territory is what a Republican form government is. And that way, when laws are made, they're never made to control beneficiaries. They're to support the beneficiaries, to protect the beneficiaries. That is a trust. That is Republican form government. When you take the people out of that government and you put them with something else, it is not Republican form anymore. When you replace them with your title, with your names, with your legal person, with your birth certificate, with your straw man, it becomes a completely fictitious government with fictitious participants, ultimately making fictitious rules. So you cannot be party to it. You can pretend, you can act, you can go along, but you are, without question, not in it. The first page of the state constitution confuses us because it says the Constitution of the state of Colorado on the title. But in the preamble, opening paragraph, it ends, it says this is the Constitution for the state of Colorado. Of and for are pretty important words. They mean the exact opposite things. So the original government, original state constitution was written for the state of Colorado, for the government body, the rules and limitations for it. But when they codified it, when they took it from being an actual contract into a statute, to a code, they changed the name and said it was their production for the rest of us, that they were making the rules for us. So as you can see, Republican form and civil form are absolutely opposite. They serve completely two different purposes, and one you really can't do. You can't share any form. You can't really protect people's rights and have a government that operates without them. So your participation in the state government is solely through your name. It is a title. It is an entity. It can hold property. It can sell property, but it is without question, again, not you. It is just a title. It is just a label. And the government only sees you. In fact, corporate America only sees you through that name. That's why they can talk to you the way they do, and they can lie to you the way they do, because they, in their little sick world, aren't really talking to you. They aren't really talking to people. They're talking to just some entity, something. And if there is another fact, too, is that lying is without question not a problem until you get to court. Government actors, everybody, even you if you want, can lie and lie and lie and lie. And there's no enforcement of it until they have to swear an oath and tell the truth on trial. So when you complain about them lying to you or saying this and that other, it doesn't matter. Nothing is going to stop them. I mean, it's the court system is the driver, and that's ultimately how the full plan was carried out. Okay, you see, the Civil War created the new thing. It created the new entity. It created a copy of you. After that, we still had courts of equity. We still had chancellery courts up until 1934. So we still had a mechanism in which you could get an equitable relief. You can file a suit for rights being violated or any other type of harm that you experience that you want justice for. That is common law. That is courts of equity. It is simply righting the wrong. There's also a court of law. Okay, there are two different things: court of equity and a court of law. Court of equity is really just right and wrong. Court of law is statutes, it's rules, it's following the rules, doing what the rules say you can do, and punishing somebody for them doing something the rules say you can't do. And so in 1934, and ultimately in Colorado in 1938, because it swept throughout the nation, they got rid of the courts of equity. They combined them. It was called the Enabling Act. And it was for, as you can imagine, government efficiency. So that they could govern more efficiently, they combined courts of law and the courts of equity into one thing, and that is civil law. If you look at the federal rules of civil procedure or any other rules of civil procedure for any state, the second rule says the only action is a civil action, which means the courts, per civil law, will only issue a judgment if the statutes allow it, if there is a rule permitting the specific thing. You see, in a court of equity, if any two people have a problem, for whatever situation or reason, it's going to go get handled and talked at and walked through in court. Just like you remember on TV when they would show how, the passionate court trial of the jury making the decision. That's a court of equity. The courts that we have now are all civil and they're all statutory. And so when you get rid of equity, when you take that away, the response is going to be a avalanche of new rules, because the only governance now is rules and torts. And so if you try to sue somebody for doing the wrong thing, and you try to do it yourself, now I've tried to do this a few times, and it's rule number 5 says, a case can be dismissed for failing to cite a cause in which relief can be granted. If you ever file a court case pro se, you'll almost guaranteed to get a motion to dismiss for that thing. And so what's that saying is that they're not going to see the case unless there is a specific statute that says a judgment or relief or anything can occur because of your complaint. So basically, your complaints now have to fall into a very narrow window. And whether it's right or wrong, whether the harm occurred or not, is a secondary thing. It's only about the rules. In fact, they do still talk about equity, about courts of equity, about cases in equity. However, they're not the original thing. They're simply cases in which the judge does not have to follow the statutes, does not have to give a judgment per the statute. They can give anything they want. And they label these injunctions or divorce or custody cases because the outcome isn't black and white. There's a little bit of leeway that the judge can give. But other cases have to follow within the rules. It is entirely a system of rules. Court cases and everything. Yes?
May I ask a question? I'll say on Wednesdays, 8 o'clock is my favorite yoga class. I always remember. But I had a question. So when you said the Constitution for Colorado, for or of, and there was a contract, who were the two parties in the contract?
Well, a trust is a contract. So the two parties of the contract are the writers, which would be the original writers of the Constitution, and the trustees.
It was the state of Colorado. I was just curious who that was.
Well, the contract is just saying that in a Republican form government, it's a trust. And the trust is a contract. That's the only thing I was getting at. But the contract is always between a grantor and a trustee. So, but it does raise a thing. I know I have been a part of groups before that has asked the state of Colorado who owns them, because they are a corporation. And corporations don't just pop out of nowhere. Somebody has to create them, and somebody owns one. So some entity out there owns the state of Colorado. I do not. Yeah, my initial guess is the corporate United States of America. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, the court system, civil law. So the evolution has not been just haphazard. It has not been by mistake, okay? The Civil War, how it occurred was very intentional. The story we know about it after the fact was very intentional. What happened in every state directly after was very intentional. Providing two court systems and then getting rid of a court of equity, which is a common law, which defines state. A state is actually people that come together under common law habits to self-govern. That's the authentic definition of state, and that's what we had as a republic, and what we the people really means. And so they took away our identity as people and gave us persons, and they took away our courts of equity. And so now we are just persons, just titles, who follow rules. And we worry about not following the rules. Forgot where I was going to go. Oh, okay. Right. So civil law, statutory law, it is nothing but tip to tail, absolutely a book of rules. It is just a rule book. They don't do anything outside the rule book. They only do what the rule book allows them to. In fact, I went with a friend who was fighting their foreclosure and talked to a public trustee of Boulder County. Basically asked him how he could do this, how he could let a bank take their house when they can't lend their own money. And he looked at me and says, he pointed at the book on the desk and says, I follow that. And that was it. So now that sucks. It sucks really bad because we were all told we were free. The home of the free, the land of the free and the brave, patriotism. We're better than every other country because we're free. It sucks, but it's not over, okay? You cannot completely take things away and not give at least one option. So in a court of equity prior to 1965, when you walked into a courtroom, they knew you were a man or a woman, and they knew your inalienable rights, the rights that could never be taken away from you. That was known before you went into court. And if you were unnecessarily controlled, the judge would know it. Or would speak to it. But when you are in a civil court where it's purely rules, and it's only rules, you have to argue for your rights. Okay, and I know a lot of folks that have been on the sovereign journey and have entangled with courts for different reasons, and for some reason we all expect them to hear our story and understand the truth and see the right thing, and they don't. They just push forward with their rules. But the rules do provide for lawsuits. They do provide for protections of liberty. The 25th Amendment to the Bill of Rights says persons, those fake things, those corporations, those whatever, they can't be deprived of liberty either. So there is some translation. So even as a person, even as your fake self, you can still file a lawsuit for the deprivation of liberty. In fact, they have specifically codified the right to sue a peace officer for depriving you of any rights. Title 13, 21, 131. In fact, if anybody here would like to walk away with a traveling plate that says, for the deprivation of liberty lawsuit, CRS 1321-131, do you have a warrant? No. Damages could equal $1 million, because that's what the statute says. If you are found for depriving of any right, you can be sued for damages, which is a loose term, but hey, we specified it up front. So, along with this, there is, on aguadiero.net, there is a fee schedule, which expresses a similar thing that you can actually hand to an officer if you would like. And there is also a template for a lawsuit under 1321-131 for suing a state official for depriving you of your rights. So just some free things for you. I also have some business cards, which I would like you guys to take. This one says, I do not want your governance. Please respect my right to liberty and leave me alone. Colorado Revised Statute 18-8-104, 1.5, a person shall not be charged with obstruction of justice because the person remained silent or because the person stated a verbal opposition to an order by a government official.
Just read that while they're reading.
What's that?
Just read that while they're reading.
No, well, however, that's rules says you can keep your mouth shut or say no. So the rules are on your side. On the back, it goes further and talks about CRS 1321-131, a peace officer who, under the color of law, is subject to other person to the deprivation of any individual rights that create binding obligations on government actors secured by the Bill of Rights. Article 2 of the state constitution is liable to the injured party for legal or equitable relief or any other appropriate relief. Colorado Bill of Rights, no person shall be deprived of liberty, life, or property without due process. So, let's see what so, yeah, I mean, it's been a hijacking of America, okay? It has been a corporate hijacking. And, you know, these are big elements of how they did it, okay? It is purely a hijacking of brainwashing and intimidation and keeping you confused. Because the truth is right there. If you do the work and you study the statutes and you find a little inner strength to be able to like push back, the statutes and the rules are on your side. They do not have a very good defense or an argument for depriving you of liberty. They rely totally on your ignorance. Totally. Now, that being said, I know there's some folks here that have been on the sovereign path, that have tried methods and different things that didn't work. And to me, that is just a testament to the truth. It is much simpler and much easier than we ever imagined. It's right there in the rules. We don't have to send paper to 10 different places or know the secret words not to say. None of that crap matters. The truth is the only thing that matters. And the truth is, you cannot be controlled without your consent or your ignorance. A couple more things too. You can stand up for your rights. You can push back too. You can also sue the state of Colorado for a statute that is unconstitutional. And you'll see there are many, many statutes that flat out deprive you of your right to liberty. There's statutes that say you have to do things. For example, if you get a random credit card in the mail and you used it, the statute says that you have created a contract despite never signing anything. That's just one example. But again, they're rules. They're just rules. And not only can we push back and stand for ourselves up in court, we can change the rules. If they're unconstitutional, we can at least file a lawsuit for judicial review that a specific statute is unconstitutional. We could do that to every single one. We could do that to every one that they pass. We can even go farther and write our own statutes. The people can create their own laws. Anybody remember what happened in 2013 here in Colorado? It was a great day in my life. The people of Colorado got together and changed the state constitution to allow for marijuana to be recreationally used. The people did that. The state Congress did not do that. You can put anything on the ballot. You can repeal anything. You can suggest you repeal anything from the ballot. You can change the language and the words to anything in the statutes just by going through a process with the state, submitting the changes, getting some signatures. But these are things we can actually do. We do not have to rely and hope that the people in Congress do the right thing or that we vote on the right individual. We can take the power back.
Why do you think that works?
What?
Why do you think that works? And why other similar trying to make other changes to the Constitution didn't work?
Well, if people don't ratify it, if people don't ratify it, that doesn't get on the ballot. Enough people. enough people wanted the marijuana legislation on the ballot.
People want the marijuana, or there was other entities that wanted it?
Well, they got the signatures. I mean, are you suggesting that the signatures are fabricated, or?
No, I'm saying there's other people that benefited from that law.
For sure.
Yeah, like that's why that worked. If we were trying to change the Constitution to say like no more income taxes, that's never going to happen.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, it's right. Because there are certain entities that will not allow that to happen.
How are they not allowed to do it?
Yeah.
How?
Creatively.
Yeah. It's going to like end up in committee, you're not there, or they're going to say like your signature.
No, there isn't. It's not the process. You study the process. It's they don't change it.
That's what I'm just saying that.
No more questions till the end.
I'm sorry,
All right.
sorry.
So anyway, for most of us, there are things we can actually do, especially if we get together and get on the same page and can spread the word. It's a little frustrating that liberty is such a powerful and big part of our history, and yet few of us really know what it looks like or when it's being taken away. If we knew that unnecessary control was our inalienable right, it might be a little easier. But, when you change titles of things, you can change the meaning and manipulate how how people understand different things. Like, I really didn't know what liberty meant until just a couple of years ago. I thought it was an important thing, for sure. I probably even supported this group, but to know it was simply freedom from unnecessary control means the whole damn thing is unconstitutional. That's all we have is unnecessary control. So I think that's about covers it. Any questions?
All I was like trying to say is there's more than the people that benefited from that law.
Right.
So there was like other entities like, okay, and this could be more conspiratorial or whatever. There may have been entities like, all right, let's test to see if marijuana is legal and what happens. So
Well, if somebody would
Yeah.
write the initiative
Yeah.
that income taxes,
like state
traffic
income taxes.
laws,
Yeah,
fake debt,
yeah.
it made those things unconstitutional or illegal, I think a lot of people would get behind it.
You'd be surprised that I bet that would end weirdly, is my guess.
Who gives a shit?
Okay.
Like,
Hey, whatever you want to do with your time. You want to fill out the signature, I'll sign it, whatever. But yeah.
Do you have a question?
I just wanted to say the Republic decides. This is my understanding of it. This is exactly what Germany did when they made it illegal that for them to have homosexuality or pedophiles and all of that. And this is how they removed the interest. They made it illegal to have interest earned on loans, and they changed the whole nation that way. So I guess my understanding is knowledge is always power, and when we thought false knowledge or data that is false, then we think that's the reality. And I sure hope there would be awakening for all, so they can be present in their own journey. And this is what it's all about. Just swimming against the river of what is norm, and norm is so demented. It's a mirage of a matrix. So therefore, we have to fight for it. And I'm really grateful. And so these information are on your site, correct?
I mean, the fee schedule and the example of the complaint to file are on the website. Aguadiero.net. That's AGUADIERO.net.
All right, I have a question. So you mentioned the Constitution several times, and in my experience, most people that pursue this more sovereign path usually don't believe in the Constitution. So I don't know if you're familiar with Lysander Spooner and his whole theory on the Constitution. So I'm just kind of curious where you come from on all of that.
I mean, Any contract takes consent and agreement participation. Any contract. Okay, so the governments of the states of the colonies did get together and create an alliance. They created a federal government in D.C.
That's not what they created first.
Huh?
That's not what they created first.
No, enlighten us. What did they create first? The Articles of Confederation. Yes, okay. Yes, the states got together, created the Articles of Confederation, which they had to, and then they created the federal government. But the point is that Constitution did create D.C. It exists only because that Constitution was written. It established what they could do with it, that it was an independent nation state, of which it was the seat of the government, so they could operate as a federal government. So it's more or less, it's really just the understanding of what it is, more than it's not a set of rules like statutes. It's not a rule book. It's an agreement between the several states and the federal government, limiting what the federal government and how it would operate. Okay? That's what it is. Now, the reason it loses all its appreciation is that it was entirely sidestepped. That when you create corporations, you create an entirely new fake world. Like the word book. We all know what a book is, lowercase book. You capitalize it, it can be anything. It could be a restaurant, it could be a car, it could be someone's last name, it could be a movie. Heck, it could just be the process of owning things. They could change it into, you're more learned because you just have more things and more books and completely turn the conversation upside down. But my point is that civil government, corporate governments is a theater. It is not constitutional. Every state and the federal government right now operates entirely outside of the limits of the Constitution. They just pay attention to it. And when you bring things up, they might make some changes and say, yeah, you're right, that wasn't constitutional, we're going to do it differently. Or, yeah, you got us. But their form and function is not in the Constitution. So it's challenging because we don't have courts for people. So we have to use a statutory system to get any type of governance, which hamstrings us because they do not innately protect our rights. And so what I was trying to express here too is that you still can stick up for your rights, even in this crooked system. And if we see it well enough, there's no reason why we can't rewrite the state government to be back into its proper Republican form. All we got to do is put the ballots in front of people's faces, get them to vote on it. So.
This was really wonderful. Thank you. So I want to know, how did you get started on this journey to kind of like find this? And what resources did you use as you went on your way? And I'm sure you're still in the process of learning more.
I heard the story about it. I went to a Boulder Stands Up meeting that was talking about state nationals at the time. And once I found out about this stuff, I was like a fly trap. Like I just consumed all of it and I studied. And I thought I had it figured out more than once and would even give presentations and classes on this is what to do. And I would learn that it doesn't really hold a lot of water or work in certain situations. So I kept studying, kept trying more than anything. And eventually I just kind of really started to see a pattern. And it really came down to truly studying what's written down, what they actually said, what those words actually mean. And it was just an avalanche after that, because then I just started things just started popping up left and right. The most powerful thing, for sure, was that I prayed for it. And when I want to know something, I do meditate on it and call it in and sit with it for a bit. I don't freak out and start scrambling and start staying up all night trying to find the answer. I put the question out there, and most of the time it just, out of nowhere, it just comes to me. And I don't really know how I can understand this and explain this stuff, and especially if you knew me 5 or 6 years ago, I couldn't have done any of this. So, yeah, that's been the impetus.
So I'm curious about how it holds up in courts, because I've had my share of courts, and I've seen judges that don't even follow the rules that are in their own book. And so I wonder, if you show up and you say, well, I'm not Mr. So-and-so, I'm not a person, I'm a, individual, whatever you want, they're going to laugh at you, and they're going to, dismiss, or they're going to, send you through the, through the cogs, and that machine is going to crush you, and you can take it up to the, next level court, and they're going to dismiss it because that's what they do. They don't look at half of the stuff. And so basically you're playing a gamble at that point. What do you think about this?
You could look at it as a gamble. Yeah, I don't subscribe to I have a driver's license. I don't fight them trying to say that I'm the person. I don't challenge jurisdiction. I only rely on what the statutes say, on what those rules say. And the biggest difference is that if you get sued, or you get a traffic ticket, or you get something like that, and you go try to talk to a judge and defend yourself, and you say some method, or you don't have jurisdiction or whatever, or even say this is depriving me of my right to liberty, the fact that it's statutory and it's just a set of rules, they can do whatever they want. They may dismiss it, but the power is actually in when you file the lawsuit. You file a countersuit to any traffic ticket. Anytime someone deprives you of liberty, you sue them. And that's why seeing what it means and what it really looks like is powerful, because right now I have a lawsuit against the Inglewood Police Department, 2 officers at the Inglewood Police Station for giving me a citation for my non-state registered plates. I asked them if there was a crime, and I asked them if they knew what liberty meant. And couldn't give me an answer, and so I stopped talking to them. It got a little hostile. I ultimately gave them my package on trust stuff. They gave me a citation. One of them was obstruction of justice. 7 days later, I sent them an invoice for the fee schedule that I gave them, and I filed a lawsuit under 1321-131 for depriving me of the right to liberty. That's what it is right now. I got pulled over this morning, too. And I asked the officer if there was a crime and what this was all about. And I said, you are depriving me of my rights. You are depriving me of my right to liberty. This is unnecessary control. And then I said, I'm going to sue you. And then he got on the radio with his other officer and says, do we have a crime? In which he said, no. And then he said, you can free to go. The last thing I want to bring up real quick on that issue, though, is that the same thing with the IRS and all of this. It is 99% intimidation. You are a completely different animal when you are scared, when you don't know what to do. You don't. The few times I've been pulled over, I was right in my mind until I saw those lights. I got a spasm in my back. All of a sudden, I forgot everything I was going to say. But that is their tool. That is how it works. So hopefully you got a little, ground under you for this one, being on the land, seeing you can push back, you can stand up. Maybe it might not be perfect the first time, but the process is set up for an appeal. And if you are competent in pro se, it's a lot cheaper. In fact, if anybody sues you, they really don't want to sue a competent pro se litigant. Not necessarily because they'll win, because a pro se will waste a lot of money. They don't have to pay anything to file anything. So big law firms do. So, all right, any more questions?
I'm going to ask the last question.
Okay.
So it's pretty much a follow-up to what was just asked. And this is kind of the question I asked for David when he did his talk, is that I'm with you morally, logically, all that. But strategically, do you think this is the best way to achieve real freedom for you? Because it does increase your interactions with the police, which increases the likelihood that you get shot over some nonsense. So what do you think about strategies that minimize interaction with government officials and police officers?
I bet a lot of people had that sentiment in 1775. Like, I'm not asking you to fight anybody. I ain't asking you to shoot nobody. I am asking you to interact with the cops. And as soon as they know they can lose, that you can push back, it will stop. Begging them, talking to them, communicating with them, telling them what's right and wrong will do nothing until they have to face it in court. And yeah, it's not a easy road, but it's capable, it's doable. So yeah, get in the fight. You might have to spend a night in jail, but you're not going to die. And everybody I know that has done it, even lost, was thankful for standing up afterwards, for simply going through the process and speaking their truth and seeing what's really happening, what these actors are really doing. So, food for thought. Thank you, everybody.
That's our talk. Give it up for Raymundo.